1 minute, Senator. 1 minute.
He's going to be talking twice in the debate. He has talked an entire debate thus far.
Engage your microphone, please, Senator Morgan.
When it's nice, you have to do it twice. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, for us on this side, the appropriation bill being debated is about delivering solutions to the challenges confronting the Jamaican people. It is about focusing keenly, improving the quality of life and securing the livelihood of the Jamaican people in what is a difficult and trying post-Hurricane Melissa dispensation. This appropriation bill is the mechanism through which the Jamaica Labour Party government's master plan for our recovery and restoration is being operationalized. Led by the Builder-in-Chief, our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, we are rolling out the blueprint and presenting the roadmap on this, our journey from resilience to resurgence. We recognize that for the PNP members, this debate is about political grandstanding, revolutionist history, and vulgar opportunism. Literally exploiting, as we just heard a while ago, the vulnerability, hardship, and dislocation bedeviling our people as a result of the devastation Hurricane Melissa left in her wake. But I have news for them, Mr. President. Where the PNP sees crisis, we in the governing Jamaica Labour Party see opportunity. Where they whine and complain, we inspire hope and creativity. They find a problem for every solution. We find the solutions to our nation's problem. Where they preach doom and gloom, we preach positivity and point people to opportunities, helping them move from resilience to resurgence. And Mr. President, as the Prime Minister said elsewhere, while they on that side only talk, nonsense in instances, we on this side get things done. We get things done, Mr. President, by moving the minimum wage from the $5,600 it stood at under the PNP to the $17,000 it will stand at come July 2026. We get things done by presenting 10 consecutive budgets with no net new taxes. We get things done by reducing unemployment from just over 13% under the PNP to the 3.3% it stands at today. We get things done by reducing poverty from the 21.2% it stood at under the PNP in 2015 to the 7.8 record low it stands at present per the last survey of living conditions. Previously, poverty stood at 8.2% per the 2023 survey. And of course, Mr. President, youth unemployment under them was in the order of 30%, and under us at present, it's in the order of 10%, Mr. President. While we get things done by abolishing the Students' Loan Bureau guarantor requirement, we are making the aspiration of attaining higher education a reality for Jamaicans from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. We get things done, Mr. President, by delivering on compensation review, providing public sector workers with the largest salary increases they have ever received in this country. We get things done by providing a rural school bus system, which offers a cheaper, safer, and more reliable mode of transportation to our children in rural Jamaica, whether they want to describe them as old buses or not. We get things done by bringing more arable land into agricultural production and significantly increasing the acreage of irrigated agricultural lands. We get things done by rehabilitating the largest number of farm roads and establishing the long-desired cold storage facilities at Kirkvine in Manchester and Essex Valley over in St. Elizabeth. We get things done, Mr. President, by increasing NHT low-income home grants, facilitating home improvement, increasing the NHT low ceiling time and again, building communities, delivering thousands of housing solutions, and lowering NHT interest rates. There's a 0% interest rate for the lowest income earners in this country, Mr. President, under this government. That is the difference between us on this side and them on that side. We get things done for the poor and vulnerable in this country, increasing PATH payments, providing a social pension for persons aged 75 and older, increasing NIS pensions, modernizing life certification process via the I'm Alive app, which Minister Morris Dixon would have pioneered in her previous incarnation. And of course, we have delivered over 300 concrete housing solutions with inside bathroom facilities to the poor and needy in this country under the new social housing program. And of course, we have been improving the state of infirmaries and we have established drop-in centers. In addition to the recently announced government procurement set aside for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, we get things done by instituting reforms to make it easier for MSMEs to access much-needed equity financing and lower-cost capital for business expansion and retooling. I speak here, Mr. President, of the DBJ, the reforms that have been announced vis-a-vis pension funds, and of course, insurance funds. And most importantly, Mr. President, we on this side get things done by bringing crime down to a 30-year low of less than 700 murders in calendar year 2025. And as you can appreciate, we are on course to go even lower this year, perhaps below the 500 mark here in calendar year 2026. Mr. President, the members opposite want to put the government in a quagmire by imperiling revenue outturn and throwing our nation's fiscal program off track. That's the only thing one can conclude when one considers the ramifications of some of the proposals they advanced during the budget debate and even throughout today during this debate on the appropriation bill before us. The opposition PNP approached the budget debate and are approaching today's appropriation bill debate with a pre-Hurricane Melissa posture. I was at pains to point that out to all members opposite of us through the course of today. How can the raft of hairy-fairy election promises in a pre-Hurricane Melissa dispensation be copied and pasted in this dispensation and presented as so-called policy proposals? As out of touch and outdated as the opposition PNP is on the question of cooperation in healthcare between Jamaica and Cuba, as well as the issue of transportation for rural school children, the PNP is outdated and out of touch on the matter of our nation's finances. As Finance Minister Favour Williams exposed in her rebuttal as she closed the budget debate this past Tuesday, the electronic invoicing and digital nomads policy suggestions for revenue generation would not and cannot materialize anytime soon. The PNP wants the government to give up its credible and sustainable revenue generation program for their tenuous, impractical, poorly thought out, and unsustainable revenue-raising suggestions. Imagine, Mr. President, they are in opposition. They should be studied. They should be undertaking copious research and consulting, if needs be, with sober and measured, competent professionals. Yet they come to these debates exhibiting chaka-chaka policy formulation and chaka-chaka workmanship. I urge you, my fellow Jamaicans, take sleep and mark debt. Chaka-chaka workmanship as opposition leads to chaka-chaka workmanship as government. and we cannot afford to let that happen. Mr. President, what we saw and heard from Julian Robinson and Mark Golding during the budget debate render them unsuitable to hold the reins of responsibility as finance minister and prime minister, respectively, in this country. They are simply not suited. A chaka-chaka government like that which would be formed by the PNP would destroy our economy and reverse the gains the Jamaican people individually and collectively have worked so hard and have sacrificed so much to attain. Other observers, Mr. President, seem to be of the same view. Speaking on a post-budget panel during Nationwide News Network's cover story this past Tuesday, respected development economist Dr. Christian Stokes said the following, and I quote, "The moment that Mr. Robinson made his budget presentation, he left his, to use a boxing metaphor, he left his chin exposed because a credible case could not be made that those revenue initiatives could be done in time for April 1st. The noted development economist, Dr. Christian Stokes, basically went on to describe the finance minister's rebuttal of Julian Robinson as, quote, detailed, justified, and well done, end quote. He went on to posit, and I'm quoting again, "We went through a budget debate, and frankly, the proposals made by the opposition in how they would finance the budget were really not realistic." And on me says so, Mr. President, and Dr. Christian Stokes says so. It is simply not credible to be proposing to do so much in terms of expenditure and fancy proposals, while at the same time asserting that you would not go the route of new taxes and you would not discontinue the $11.4 billion drawdown from the NHT, Mr. President. Time come, Mr. President, for the PNP to stop fooling up Jamaican people. Time come for the PNP to stop giving the Jamaican people a 6 for a 9. What we heard during the budget debate from opposition leader Mark Golding and his spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, and no doubt what we heard throughout the course of today in this debate on the appropriation bill from the PNP senators is so voodoo type economics. As Finance Minister Favour Williams said on Tuesday, Mr. President, their maths is simply not mathsing. Mr. President, the opposition PNP would have us believe that they are sincere in their pontification and exhortations regarding the dislocation and hardship confronting many of our Jamaican brothers and sisters, especially those domiciled in Western Jamaica. During the budget debate, the point was made about displaced people sleeping in cars. Indeed, during his contribution to the debate, Julian Robinson shared with us the plight of Miss Margaret in Savannah Lamar, whose shop, he said, was destroyed by Hurricane Melissa, and James in Montego Bay, who he said runs a small transport business and suffered tremendous loss as a result of Hurricane Melissa-related damage to his vehicle. Mr. President, the Jamaican people will recall that at a time, as Senator Sinclair said just now, when every Jamaican should have been standing in one accord, demonstrating solidarity with the country's centralized and streamlined efforts to mobilize post-Hurricane Melissa relief support and raise funds via the Support Jamaica platform, the opposition PNP went about setting up their own fundraising platform, a panel and competing portal dubbed, quote, PNP Hurricane Melissa Relief, end quote. In a rank and vulgar exhibition of party considerations over country, the opposition PNP, Mr. President, and its supporters have invariably diverted support that could otherwise have gone to Jamaica in terms of the Support Jamaica platform to their own platform, which was a party-related initiative. Now, the question is, Since the opposition PNP is so keen on telling us about people sleeping in cars and enduring considerable hardship as a result of Hurricane Melissa, how much of the money raised by the PNP's Hurricane Melissa Relief Fund have they given in humanitarian aid to the people sleeping in the cars? How much of the money raised by the PNP has Julian Robinson and Mark Golding made available to Miss Margaret from Savannah Lamar or James from Montego Bay? I urge the people of Jamaica, Mr. President, to take sleep and mark death. Mr. President, the difference between us on this side and the members on that side is that we on this side put our money where our mouth is. They are talk, we are substance. Our genuine care and concern are borne out, Mr. President, by the Hurricane Melissa relief and recovery interventions we have rolled out, both from a state-funded government standpoint and from our personal resources, including the millions donated by Senators Abka Fitz-Henley and Christian Tavares Finson, which Senator Lambert Brown seems to have sleepless nights over. Mr. President, it would be remiss of me to contribute to this debate and bring a most profound point into sharp focus. I want to implore my Jamaican brothers and sisters looking on, if you take nothing else away from this debate and the entire budget process, if you, the people of Jamaica, remember nothing else from this debate and the entire budget process, I want you to remember this. Whatever the PNP says about the state of the economy and the state of our beloved country, whatever negative picture they paint and would have you believe, best believe that in their personal life and private business affairs, they are having it otherwise. When them say nothing are going, Mr. President, when them say nothing are going, they are misleading you because big things are going for enough for them in their personal life and personal business affairs. PNP officials, especially the top on our ones, tell their supporters one thing while they do another. They tell their supporters that times are hard, things are tough, and nothing are going, while they are all about the place, Mr. President, investing, pursuing business opportunities, and making money like they have never made money before. I am here this afternoon, Mr. President, to expose their hypocrisy and mash down their lie. Mr. President, it is simply cruel and demonstrably unconscionable, Mr. President, to draw the wool over people's eyes, especially their indoctrinated and misguided PNP supporters. They dumb down their own supporters and blind them while their own eyes remain open. The eyes of the PNP officials are wide open as they go about the place, buying up land, they develop land, they get into real estate, they acquire heavy equipment for construction, and they get into into agriculture, including hydroponic farming, like their General Secretary, rearing goat, like Damian Crawford, and such the like. It is only in this debate that we saw the rank hypocrisy on display. The member opposite, who waxed warm on the question of beach access, was revealed as being associated with a household that owns a private beach. What kind of hypocrisy is that? Mr. President, PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding stands on a soapbox regarding beach access, yet he, PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding, say Marky G, stands on a soapbox regarding beach access, yet he is reportedly associated with a company, a project that is offering beachfront real estate for sale. Such hypocrisy. Mr. President, The PNP is a classic case of the hand of Esau and the voice of Jacob. They are inherently tricksters. It was Damian Crawford, Mr. Tricks You himself, who publicly confirmed that some years ago, their ostensible next leader. Mr. President, they tell the people one thing while they do another. And that is why the Prime Minister, Mr. President, felt compelled to highlight the PNP's hypocrisy during the budget debate, revealing that one PNP MP called and urged him to ignore the utterances of their embattled General Secretary Dayton Campbell, who was opposing the salary increase, citing that they could not survive without it. The Prime Minister also exposed the PNP MPs. Prime Minister also exposed that the PNP MPs were the first ones calling into the Parliament, Mr. President, for a calculation as to their retroactive salary. Imagine that. The opposition PNP often characterize our economy as low growth, low tech, low wage. Isn't it contradictory, therefore, Mr. President, that they scoff at and ridicule our thrust to systematically lift the minimum wage over this 5-year policy cycle? Our undertaking is to move the minimum wage ultimately to 32,000 Jamaican dollars. It should be noted, Mr. President, that increased capital allowance, the liberalization of capital, as I mentioned earlier, pension funds and insurance funds, curricular development, and workforce training emphasizing STEM, as well as strategic partnerships such as those forged with India and manifest in the work of the Amber Group, for example, are encouraging developments vis-a-vis increased incorporation and mainstreaming of the ingredients where tech is support. Those are the things that will move us further along the value chain and ensure that Jamaica secures more exponential levels of growth. Mr. President, what I like about this 2026-2027 budget and the appropriation bill that gives effect to it is the degree to which it addresses many of the long-standing inhibitors and binding constraints on growth. We heard from the Finance Minister a well-thought-out suite of measures that will free up capital to the productive sector and other businesses. So the opposition often lament and likes to ask, where is the growth going to come from? Well, they have yet another answer, Mr. President. No other person than the Prime Minister himself also brought the growth imperative into sharp focus, underscoring NARA, underscoring FAST, and how those principal mechanisms will serve to accelerate our rates of growth. Mr. President, both Julian Robinson and Mark Golding brought the issue of tax compliance into sharp focus during the budget debate as part of their no new tax, no NHT drawdown advocacy vis-a-vis raising much needed revenue to finance the 2026-2027 budget. Go after the tax dodgers and those who are not compliant, they said. The money is there to be collected. Go and collect it, they said. The next few minutes must be used to lay bare, Mr. President, the PNP's rank hypocrisy and insincerity on the matter of tax compliance and revenue protection. It was only recently that a performance audit report from the Auditor General on procurement at the University of the West Indies, UHWI, revealed repugnant and despicable procurement practices which had the effect of the consolidated fund, our public purse, being deprived of much needed revenue in favor of private companies. The UHWI's tax-exempt status, Mr. President, was utilized in favor of private entities, as reported by the Auditor General, for the acquisition of medical equipment and other supplies. At the center, we answer the question now, Muji. At the center of the tax fraud saga is a company identified by a media house that is the bane of the PNP's existence, as being owned and operated by senior PNP official and first-term Member of Parliament, Mr. Dennis Gordon, with the entity being the Jackden Group of Companies. Mr. President, what can go so? It would interest Julian Robinson, Mark Golding, and the other PNP members to know that, like charity, tax compliance and revenue protection begins at home. Start with the people in the mirror. As they sought to extract political mileage from the Auditor General report regarding UHWI procurement, the opposition PNP convened a press conference on January 29, 2026. Little did they know that the media was on top of their hypocrisy and had a leadership interrogation imperative, because while the PNP sought to focus attention on the reported procurement issues at the UHWI, the media focused attention on Mark Golding's actions, or should I say, lack thereof, given the hat he wears. And I'm not referring to the anti-badman cap the Prime Minister gifted him last week. I'm referring to his position as PNP president and opposition leader vis-a-vis Dennis Gordon's position as his subordinate and one of the persons reportedly embroiled in the UHWI scandal. Can you imagine, Mr. President, even in opposition, the PNP find their way embroiled in scandals? So they have not only had the Manchester Municipal Corporation scandal, they have not only had the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation scandal, they have had the KSAMC hush money scandal, and they have now added the reported Dennis Gordon Jatden group of companies tax fraud scandal to their list of scandals, even while in opposition.
1 minute, 1 minute. Senator Brown.
I dare you
Senator
to come
Brown.
and force me to sit.
Senator Brown, come
You're
down.
a coward.
Senator Brown, come down.
Yeah. I rise in a point of order. But if that little imbecile is telling me to sit,
Come down. No, it's
I
okay.
want him to come and make me sit.
Come.
Unparliamentary, I can't say that.
The President,
Order. He needs to withdraw that language and description of the
that the
member.
imbecile, that's what you want me to withdraw?
You cannot describe the
You want
member
me
like
to
that.
withdraw the imbecile?
Mr. President,
All right.
Mr.
I
President,
withdraw the imbecile. If Abka Fitzendley want me to sit, tell him to come and force it.
Go ahead. What's your point of
Thank you.
order?
Under the standing order, we are not to make improper motive about members of this chamber or the other chamber. The comments about MP Gordon, may I be allowed to make my point of order and say it violates that standing order. And as much as I am prepared to withdraw the imbecile comment, then he should also withdraw the proper motive to which is put. So let me make it clear, President. The only person who can get me to sit is the marshal, not some loudmouth, bagger, two-mouthed boy from Nationwide.
Senator Brown, control yourself. All right. So hear this now. Hear this now. In order to have a certain amount of equanimity and fairness, if I were to rule that anything said in relation to the member of the lower house was offensive to the standing orders, it would really fly in the face of some of the most disgusting things that many persons on your side have said about the Honorable Prime Minister in this country. Right in this chamber. Over the time, the most disgusting things. So what I'm going to do is just ask Senator Morgan. He has made his point just to move on. Yeah.
Mr. President, what was intended to be a political point-scoring UHWI press conference backfired immensely on the PNP. It was a complete train wreck, not dissimilar to how history will record that now infamous Jeffrey Epstein-related Newsnight interview between Emily Maitlis of the then BBC well, of the BBC at the time, and the then Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom. Like the then Prince Andrew of the UK, Mark Golding bobbed and weaved as he struggled to respond to the questions put to him by the probing and incisive members of the media who were in attendance. Mr. President, in the face of very damning, credible and compelling evidence against Dennis Gordon, insofar as his Jack-Den group of companies, PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding
there's not even a court case. And the member is making remarks about a member in the other house that is disparaging, that is contrary to the standing order. And above all, much of what he said is untrue, is conducting a scurrilous campaign, and the Senate deserve better. So, my point of order is that he's violating the improper motive and making disparaging remarks in respect.
The President ruled a while ago.
And I'm making it again because you have repeated it. He has not moved on. And you all must do better. You must all do better.
He was just summarizing.
Senator Morgan, your time is running out, you know, and every time I'm not adding on any time, you know, so you need to just do what you're doing.
Mr. President. Mr. President, the PNP President and Opposition Leader has not taken action against the referenced member in respect of his parliamentary assignments. Let the records show, Mr. President, that again, we on this side are calling for the immediate removal of Mr. Dennis Gordon from Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, PAC, by Opposition Leader Mark Golding. You cannot be auditioning for the highest elected office in the land and be found wanting every time these tests of leadership and issues of moral turpitude arise. To Mr. Mark Golding, I say, sir, your purported commitment to integrity in public life and your call for increased tax compliance ring hollow. Indeed, they are undermined by your failure to act against the referenced member. Mr. President, the financial sector collapse of the 1990s, which many persons have come to refer to loosely as the FinSac debacle, is the PNP's most egregious transgression against the Jamaican people. The PNP is acutely aware that it is so, and they are absolutely embarrassed by it. It is not surprising in this context, President, to note the coordinated and concerted effort at revisionist history throughout the budget debate by PNP officials and their surrogates across traditional and social media. But, Mr. President, you know we are in the business of setting the record straight and mashing down the PNP's lies. The opposition PNP has sought to suggest that it was merely reckless and imprudent action on the part of bankers that caused the collapse of the financial sector in the 1990s. They are so barefaced, brazen, and revisionist as to try and paint FinSac as a good thing, the solution to the problem they posit. History, however, records that business operators and debtors were not afforded an opportunity to avert loss of their assets, which, in many instances, were made available to others for cents in the dollar, but they were denied the opportunity. They may seek to distort the facts and revise history as much as they want, but let it be known unequivocally that it was policy failure, the poor decisions of the then PNP government, exacerbated, of course, by imprudent financial sector operations, which resulted in the collapse of the financial system and the decimation of our productive sector. I use the word imprudent. Go and check with your ENT. In short, Mr. President, it was the then PNP government's premature liberalization of the foreign exchange market and the unsustainable and ill-advised high interest rate policy that primarily led to the financial sector collapse of the 1990s.
Senator Morgan,
just a minute,
that's
Mr.
you.
President. Just a minute.
What you call a minute? That's you, you know.
That's the time allowed for stoppage, Mr. President.
Stop
a minute and a half, 90 seconds.
What?
90 seconds, Mr. President.
Run 90 seconds on the clock, man.
In their coordinated and preemptive bid to take the sting out of the wretched and incontrovertible historical transgression, FinSAC, the PNP has set about deflecting and hoodwinking the Jamaican people, both inside and outside of the parliament. Release the FinSAC report is their cry. Release the FinSAC report is their refrain. However, Auntie Donna just said yes, but watch me now. This past Monday, Mr. President, the 23rd of March, 2026, the election-scarred PNP president and opposition leader Mark Golding appeared on a YouTube program where he was interviewed by one of their social media operatives. The question was put to Mr. Mark Golding as to whether he would release the FinSAC Commission of Inquiry report if he were elected Prime Minister of Jamaica following the next general elections. Mr. President, this was Mark Golding's response, and I quote, "The FinSAC situation is difficult, Andre, because there is no report. There is no report to deliver. They never wrote it. They never completed their report," end quote. He later went on to say the following, Mr. President. What Nigel Clark said he was going to do was establish a website and put all the materials, all the evidential material and so on that were generated by the process of that commission of inquiry. Now, the question is, Mr. President, if Mark Golding knows, as the government has long asserted, that there is no FinSAC Commission of Inquiry report, why has he, like Julian Robinson and the other PNP members and supporters, been calling for the release of the quote-unquote FinSAC report? How can a report that doesn't exist be released? What can go so? Oh, what a tangled web there, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
When at first they practice to deceive.
Thank you. Minister, Thank you very much, Senator Morgan. Senator Thompson.